Hey YouTubers, I hadn't originally thought to make this a how-to. I just wanted to repair my son's Switch controller. Apparently when you push left, it would just keep going left. However, it didn't feel like the joystick was stuck right. The spring returns just fine, so I figured there might be some dirt or debris in here. Now, I'm just going to caveat right now, if you don't have the patience, dexterity, the right tools, just stop. You're going to be dealing with a lot of extremely tiny parts, and not to mention you're going to need good vision, which mine, unfortunately, my middle-aged eyes are failing. So it just makes it really, really difficult. But if you still insist, don't say I didn't warn you. Now, again, this is not meant to be a how-to. It's more like learn from my mistakes. First off, for this joystick controller here, you're going to be dealing with really, really thin metal. So what happens is that there are two main clamps that go on here that unfortunately when you pry them up in order to remove the backing to get inside the controller, it'll just break off. I've already glued this. I should have actually filmed it before I glued it back on, but within here are three plastic parts. One goes into the bottom so that when you push the joystick down, it'll declick on the electronic switch right there. Then there's another plastic here with two metal prongs that controls the up-down direction, and another one over here that controls the left-right. So all of that maps into this little wire here that you plug into the circuit board over there. Again, if you take this apart, that's it. There's no returning back because these metal prongs are really thin, plus not to mention you got to pry the side here and whatnot, and by the time you get it all apart, it just will be very, very difficult to put it back together. So thus, I've dabbed two super glue dabs right here to glue it back. Now, to put it back together, it has to go through an opening that's ever so smaller than this. So you're going to kind of have to angle it in. And I guess if you take this in reverse, you could kind of figure out how I took it apart. But again, this wasn't really meant to be a how-to. So now once that's in place, there are two screws that hold the joystick controller in place. So just make sure that's firmly planted. Now also of potential pitfalls, right? As you take off the circuit board, it may lift off this rubber controller tab. Then there's the direction buttons, which must go in a very particular order. As you'll note, there's these two little prongs here, plastic prongs on each side, so that way the arrows will go very specifically in the correct order, as you can see here, up, down, left, right. Once you have the four buttons positioned correctly, you're going to put on the cover, and you got to make sure that that caps flatly so that the edge of the cover overlaps the buttons, as you can see there. It can't be lifted up. Then as mentioned, there's these two silver screws here that go into the controller. So you're going to need a P000 tip. What I'd advise is put the screw onto the tip and then angle it in. I got this one halfway in. I don't want to do it all the way in because I need to do this side as well. And you got to be very careful about what screws go where because there's different sizes, different thread pitches. So just a little bit by hand. Then now I'm going to complete the rest. And you don't want to over tighten it either. Just be careful to just tighten just enough. Alright, so that's finally in. Now the next step is to get the main circuit board back on here, along with the motor. Now how this works is so that blue cable comes over the main circuit board because it plugs into and you got to be ever so mindful of the buttons that you're not pushing it up and misaligning it because if you do, you're going to have to do this all over again. So once you've got the circuit board position in place, hold it tight and flip it over carefully. Of course, you don't want to dislodge any of the further wires, and just double check the buttons. Make sure that they're protruding. Give each one a quick press. It works. Good. Now, this is the main vibration motor. There's a tape on the bottom side, so you just simply put it back in here. Give it a firm press, and that goes in. Now the battery goes into this slot, which was hiding four screws here. Two of them are actually for the main circuit board. Two of them holds this piece onto the circuit board itself. Now before we get to that, I gotta get that displace button here. And that's this piece right here with the spring into position. Now what happens is this button pushes the micro switch over there. So the two tiny screws that hold this circuit board into place are right there and right there diagonally. So again, take your P000 tip and you should be able to just hand tighten it because it's just such a small screw. So I got one in place so I could finally let go of the circuit board. Get the second one in. As mentioned, easiest is probably to put the screw into the tip and then thread it by hand. Okay, so that way it holds down the main circuit board. Then now I'm going to have the task of trying to put these two wires back in using tweezers. For this wire, which is the top right micro switch here, there's actually a flip plastic hinge here, if you will. So all you have to do is just slot this in carefully, and it goes in between here. So just make sure that's in snug. Then you're going to actually take the plastic piece and you're going to flip it downwards to clamp it. So there you see, now it is clamped. For the blue controller wire, it's pretty much the same thing. The black part is actually a hinge, so you would flip that up, make sure you get the ribbon cable aligned, and then just push it in gently. So once you got a positioned in, go ahead and push the black clamp down. Then the next step is you're going to put this chassis back in, but you got to be very careful of the motor wire not to clamp it or damage it. So just going to use a tweezer or a screwdriver, lift that up out of the way, and just double check the positioning. So there are two prongs here at the top that clamps back into the main faceplate of the controller, and there are a total of 3 screws. So that's this bottom corner here, right here, and then diagonally over there. This battery is taped and it simply goes back into place over here. So I am going to just double check that this controller works. Okay, so I've confirmed that the controller is working fine. I don't know if the persistent left issue went away, but for those curious, this is the battery. It takes up a good chunk of the space within the controller itself. And let me get you some information on that. It is branded Nintendo, but I'm pretty sure there's some OEM manufacturer that makes these. Alright, now just to finish the rest of putting this controller back together, take your P000 tip again, put on these 3 silver screws that are a little bit longer than the 2 micro ones that went onto the main circuit board itself. And that's the first one right there in the bottom left corner, right next to the vibration motor. Then 2 more goes into here and here. Now these are the 2 that holds the battery chassis into the main faceplate of the controller. Okay, once that's done, there's still some residual stickiness on the tape itself, so just simply place the battery back in, make sure it's snug, make sure no wires are crimped. Then you're going to take the whole assembly, the back of the controller, and put it back on. Just make sure everything's aligned. And once they're aligned, there's going to be 4 black screws that go into the 4 holes here. 1, 2, 3, and then 4 right here. So these black screws require a security bit. I found that the Y0 bit fits. Without that, you're not going to be able to even get this controller open. So I'm just going to position the 4 screws back in first. Then once you got the screws positioned, go ahead, take your Y0 bit. And there you go. Controller is all back fixed again. So in summary, like I said, this is a difficult undertaking. If you're not skilled, you don't have the right security tools, great vision, as well as good lighting and patience, most of all, don't even bother attempting to take this apart. But if you do, hopefully this video will help you out with the pitfalls that I encountered while disassembling it. Thanks again for watching.